Imagine you live in an alternative universe, a world in which absolute transparency is a lifestyle. Nobody has a closet full of skeletons or wastes time trying to hide their deepest, darkest secrets, because frankly, there are none. And that gripping fear you get from trying to maintain a perfectly curated image by suppressing all of the yucky, less desirable stuff from your life simply doesn't exist. Because in this world, you are who you are, and you've done what you've done. And there's no need to suppress, deny, or ignore the underbelly of your life. Here, mistakes aren't considered sources of embarrassment, ridicule, or shame. Human error isn't frowned upon. Your daily actions aren't predicated on your past transgressions, and therefore you're gifted with the ability to show up honestly, authentically, and most of all, unapologetically. Welcome to a beautiful place we lovingly call freedom. Well, too bad most of us will never know what it means to really be free. Or, for that matter, what freedom really feels like. Because our daily actions are in contrast 100% to what I just presented. In our world, people do judge. They criticize. They mock. They ridicule. They find fault. And they will shame you all day long. Therefore, naturally, we begin to edit. We begin to present half-truths, slap on filters, and do everything humanly possible to prevent ourselves from being judged or feeling less than. And in that process, certain things start to happen. All of our deepest, darkest secrets begin to manifest and make way. You know, secrecy, it's the act of holding things back. We've all done things we're not proud of, every single one of us. In fact, in this room, there is someone who's cheated on a spouse. There's someone who's had a drinking problem. There's someone who's had one too many pills over the last couple of weeks because of a pain and decided it's no big deal. There's someone who's had a gambling problem. We've done things that we swore we'd never do, defining things, embarrassing things, things we judged others for. Give me a moment and let me share a secret with you. It was the mid-2000s, and banks were handing out mortgages like a volunteer stand at the New York City Marathon. If you had a pulse, you qualified. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating, but definitely not by much, because you remember what it was like. You get a home, you get a home, you get a home, we all get homes. Suddenly, you had hundreds of thousands of people qualifying for homes they would have never qualified for under normal circumstances. Who says you need to wait for 8,500 square feet when you can get it right now? And while consumers couldn't get enough of this deal, neither could Wall Street. So they decided to jump into the housing market with both feet. They packaged these securities into bonds and such, and sold them off to investors. And an interesting thing started to happen. Even though this was supposed to be a perfect formula, one thing was integral in order to make it success. And that is homeowners actually being able to pay their mortgages. Suddenly, you had millions of people who had not been properly vetted. Hundreds of thousands of people who signed up for mortgages that looked one day on day one and completely different 6 months later after it ballooned. And you partner that with banks over here and prices starting to fall, and you had the perfect storm. One that caused horrific, catastrophic ramifications here in the United States. But the interesting thing about this was there were people who knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that this formula would never have a happy ending. And ironically, a lot of those people fell into one or two categories. You know, you've heard of hear no evil, see no evil, do no evil, and that was one category. They decided to turn the other cheek and look the other way. And the second category decided, you know, I'm about to make some money on this. And they bet against it and made a windfall. I bring this example because it is paramount in demonstrating how catastrophic a secret can be. Because you actually had people who were privy to information that could have actually changed the game historically in our country. But because they decided not to, it almost collapsed our entire global financial system. So just think what a personal secret can do. According to the Journal of Social Psychology, the average person holds around 13 secrets, 5 of which they have never told a soul. So what does that mean? I want you to look to the person on your left. Go ahead. Now look to the person on your right. Between the two of you, you're holding approximately 10 secrets that you're hoping and praying never get out. Let's let that sink in for a moment. Dr. Brené Brown, leading authority on shame and vulnerability from the University of Houston, says, owning a secret can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as running from one. So, come here for a moment. I'm going to share another secret with you. It was my sophomore year in college. And home from school, and I decided to do what a lot of college students do who are broke. Decided to get a seasonal job. And in my case, it was at a local department store. So they hired me and a couple of my friends, and the promise of a few weeks' worth of work, some really dope clothes, extra time was enough to make this girl pretty hype. About a week after starting, I began to notice something. Several of my colleagues were having their friends come in, and they were hooking them up. Translation, their friends would come in and buy certain things, and they would toss in a whole bunch of extra things that they had not actually paid for, also known as stealing. When I first saw this, honestly, I was floored. I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Who would do that? We get a discount. Are you serious? But it wasn't long before my once incredulous reaction morphed into, we're having conversations. Maybe we need to hook ourselves up too. Besides, it's a big store. Next thing you know, my friends and I are sitting around hashing out a game plan like Bonnie and Clyde. But here's the thing. None of us had ever done anything like this before. Translation. Our families would unleash holy hell if they ever found out we defamed the family name. In addition, all of us were on college break, which means we had a whole lot to lose if it didn't work out well. But guess what? That didn't stop us. So we got together, put together our game plan. The morning of the heist, I woke up sick as a dog. I jumped out of my bed and I ran into my bathroom and I threw up all over the place. Every single hair on my arm was standing at attention in fear. Butterflies were flying around my stomach at Mach 10 speed. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that not only was this fundamentally wrong, it was the antithesis of who I was. And if that wasn't bad enough, I actually had to steal my mom's car while she was in bed asleep in order to even get to the mall. But here's the thing. It felt too late to stop. Things were already in motion. The others were already on their way. So what did I do? I got in the car, and I put it in drive. Now, earlier I mentioned that none of us had ever done anything like this for a reason. Because we weren't actually the smoothest of thieves. In fact, it was actually probably quite comical to the security guards behind who were looking at this foolishness. And it didn't take long, in fact, less than long, a few seconds, for us to step outside the store to be met with several police officers standing there ready to arrest us. The interesting thing is, I saw it coming a mile away. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt we deserved to be caught for that foolishness. Ironically, I only spent 3 hours in jail. Was allowed to go back to school, do community service. But what I didn't know then is I would end up spending the next 25 years in a self-imposed prison, and I was the prison guard holding the key. That one incident changed the way that I looked at myself. I had done something that was fundamentally against my core value. Suddenly, I saw myself as someone lesser. It eroded my self-esteem, my self-confidence. Everything I was doing was to protect the secret. That's what happens often. You do so many things to get to the point that nobody finds out about it. What I didn't know then, that I know now, is that actual freedom comes in being found out. I believe the world will never see you higher than you see yourself. And when any internal misalignment is happening, it literally shifts everything. And so I was stuck. And then one day I was sitting around with a client, and we were having a conversation about, of all things, the importance of being transparent and authentic. So I shared my story. And then decided to share it with a couple other people who were close friends of mine now, but I didn't feel comfortable with earlier. And I started sharing it more and more. And I started recognizing the importance of controlling my own narrative. Far too often, we feel as though we're keeping something private. But psychotherapist Cheryl Fuller says there is a distinct difference in privacy and secrecy. Privacy is voluntary. There's certain things, I just have personal boundaries that I don't necessarily want you to cross. I want to keep them, hold them close. Secrecy is I'm holding this close to my vest because of shame, because I don't want to be judged or ridiculed. Let me give you an example. Private. You got terrible grades in high school. Secret. You forged your degree. Know this. If you have gone through life or experiencing what it feels like to be trapped by a decision that you've made that you're hoping and praying never get out, I want you to recognize you're not alone. To err is human. You're not able to go through this long, illustrious life unscathed. Recognize that you are not your mistake. Just like you're not your leg, just not you're like your arm, you're the sum of all parts. You're going to have highs and lows and ups and downs. Your life is no way to be flatlined. So you cannot be defined by that one instance. And finally, recognize that it is your responsibility to control your narrative. It's your history. Can't rewrite it. You can't relive it. It's yours to tell. So, you don't have to live in an alternative universe in order to live an honest, authentic, and unapologetic life. You simply need to make a decision. A decision that secrets have no place in affecting change personally, professionally, or socially. Thank you.